take your Bibles, turn to Job chapter number 4. Job chapter number 4. We're going to read 2 chapters here, and probably going to look at it again next week. We'll see how we go and how much we get through. But there's a lot here, and I'll take feedback as well. Hopefully you've read. We're going to try and do them. We said 2 weeks ago that we're going to try and do them by conversations. So Job, and then Eliphaz, and then Job, and then. So we'll break it down into that group. So this particular group is 2 chapters. We'll read both chapters, 4 and 5. All right, so I don't want to just pick out a verse. It's good to read through. Not everyone will read it, and if you don't read it now, you may never read it, or at least for years and years and years. So let's take the opportunity while it's here. Follow along as I read it. Chapter 4 and chapter 5, verse 1 says, Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, If we essay to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? But who can withhold himself from speaking? Behold, thou hast instructed many, and thou hast strengthened the weak hands. Thy words have upholden him that was falling, and thou hast strengthened the feeble knees. But now is it come upon thee, and thou faintest, it toucheth thee, and thou art troubled. Is not this thy fear, thy confidence, thy hope, and thy uprightness of thy ways? Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? Even as I have seen, that they that plough iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same. By the blast of God they perish, and by the breath of his nostrils are they consumed. The roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion and the teeth of the young lions are broken. The old lion perisheth for a lack of prey, and the stout lion's whelps are scattered abroad. Now a thing was secretly brought to me, and mine ear received a little thereof. In thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falleth on men, fear cometh upon me, and trembling, which made all my bones to shake. Then a spirit passed before my face, and the hair of my flesh stood up. It stood still, but I could not discern the form thereof. An image was before mine eyes. There was silence, and I heard a voice saying, Shall mortal man be more just than God? Shall a man be more pure than his Maker? Behold, he put not trust in his servants, and his angels he charged with folly. How much less in them that dwell in houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, which are crushed before the moth. They are destroyed from the morning to evening. They perish forever without any regarding it. Doth not their excellency, which is in them, go away? They die, even without wisdom. Call now if there be any that will answer thee, and to which of the saints wilt thou turn? For wrath killeth the foolish man, and envy slayeth the silly one. I have seen the foolish taking root, but suddenly I cursed his habitation. His children are far from safety, and they are crushed in the gate. Neither is there any to deliver them. Whose harvest the hungry eateth up, and taketh it even out of the thorns, and the robber swalloweth up their substance. Although the affliction cometh not forth of the dust, neither doth trouble spring out of the ground, yet a man is born unto trouble as the sparks fly upward. I would seek unto God, and unto God would I commit my cause, which doeth great things and unsearchable, marvellous things without number, who giveth rain upon the earth, and sendeth waters upon the fields, to set up on high those that be low, that those which mourn may be exalted to safety. He disappointeth the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise. He taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the froward is carried headlong. They meet with darkness in the daytime, and grope in the noonday as the night. But he saveth the poor from the sword, from their mouth, and from the hand of the mighty. So the poor hath hope, and iniquity stoppeth her mouth. Behold, happy is the man whom God correcteth. Therefore despise not thou the chastening of the Almighty. For he maketh sore and bindeth up. He woundeth, and his wounds make whole. He shall deliver thee in 6 troubles, yea, in 7 there shall be no evil touch thee. In famine he shall redeem thee from death, and in war from the power of the sword. Thou shalt be hid from the scourge of the tongue. Neither shalt thou be afraid of destruction when it cometh. At destruction and famine thou shalt laugh. Neither shalt thou be afraid of the beasts of the earth. For thou shalt be in league with the stones of the field, and the beasts of the field shall be at peace with thee. And thou shalt know thy tabernacle shall be in peace. And thou shalt visit thy habitation, and shall not sin. Thou shalt know also that thy seed shall be great, and thine offspring as the grass of the earth. Thou shalt come to thy grave in a full age, like as the shock of a corn cometh in its season. Lo, this, we have searched it, so it is. Hear it, and know thou it for thy good. We'll leave it there. That's Eliphaz's words back to Job. A lot there. Hopefully it's not the first time you've read it. If not, it might be a bit to consume and think, what is going on here? Thoughts, feedbacks, comments, questions or queries in this first part? Do you have the microphone there, Connor? Yes, sorry, that's why I'm looking at you. Thoughts, comments, feedbacks, any verses or things that comments you want to make about this? Oh. That's the letter that we were missing. All right, thanks. Josh.
One thing I noticed just reading through it was at the beginning there where he says to Job, behold, verse 3, behold, thou hast instructed many, and thou hast strengthened the weak hands. Thy words have upholden him that was falling, and thou hast strengthened the feeble knees. But now it is come upon thee, and thou faintest, it toucheth thee, and thou art troubled. Is not this thy fear, thy confidence, thy hope, and the uprightness of thy ways? It just made me think reading through that, like Job was a man that was obviously counselling other people and encouraged them through the tough times.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now it's like this tough time is happening to him. And it just reminded me of at the very end of Job where he quotes that the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. I think that's something that he probably would have quoted to a lot of other people as well in encouraging them. And now Eliphaz is just saying to him, now it's your turn. So that was just something that I sort of got from these chapters. So.
He's kind of having a little go at Job as well, saying, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You gave it out, but you're struggling to take it now.
Yeah.
That's what he's kind of saying to him. So it's kind of a pointed words to him. But he did absolutely strengthen. That's Job. And as you read through Job, you'll find that again, where people came to Job. That was the kind of person he is. That when Job spoke, people listened, and people stood when he entered. Like that was him. He was the one that was the comforter. He was the one that was the man. He was the go-to man. And you see it again here that he was quite the individual. As you see his life evolve in these passages, Job is a fascinating individual to meet. Any other thoughts or comments, Lisa?
It's sort of a comment question sort of thing. When reading through Job all the time, I find it really confusing to know how to take it, to take the scriptures. So I don't know how to phrase this.
No, it's a perfectly phrased question.
So when I'm reading through Proverbs, I understand that this is wisdom from God.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
Inspired by God, and I can take it as a truth. But because of what happens at the end of Job, when these men are speaking,
yes,
is it true? Do you know what I mean? So he's saying, oh, well, this or that. But I find that really hard because then to apply it to my own life, well, is this the truth or is this just a comment from someone who is not inspired of God? Obviously, it's inspired of God.
Yep.
But so that's a question I've always had on Job, in how to read it in relating it to truth and your own life. Yeah.
Does everyone understand that exact comment? Because that's exactly what I have in my notes tonight, based around that very comment. Is right. How do you actually take what Eliphaz says? Is this wisdom to learn? Is this wisdom from above, or is it wisdom from beneath? Is this godly wisdom, or is this man-centered wisdom? Because both wisdoms seem right, and James tells us that there is a wisdom from above and a wisdom from beneath. Now, they head in different directions. One ends up in purity and gentleness and goodness, and the other one ends up in strife and contention, and even though from the outset they look like good, right wisdom. Now, this is interesting because it seems jumbled, because God comes along later on to Eliphaz, to Elihu, and the third guy, Bildad, and there comes along and says, thou hast words without knowledge. You use a lot of words, but not necessarily accurately. So I have the title of tonight in my notes, and if it would be I'll give it to Ben to put it on the YouTube, is this: true, and then in brackets, and not true. Because that's kind of how to take it, is that yes, it's true in one sense, and that very thing I struggle with as well. Can you take it all to the bank? Because some you can take to the bank. Because in fact, in this very instance, look at verse 17 of chapter 5. if chapter 5 of verse 17 says, "Behold, happy is the man whom God correcteth, therefore despise not thou the chastening of the Almighty." Does that sound familiar to anyone? Do you know where it is? It's in Hebrews. And Paul, in Hebrews chapter 12, says, "Despise not now the chastening of the Lord." So Paul uses Eliphaz as wisdom from above and says, this is good, solid wisdom. It is in Proverbs. You'll find as well that Solomon quotes a lot from the book of Job, that he is greatly influenced from what he reads in Job, and then you'll find them written in the Proverbs, and then Paul also verifies it in the New Testament by saying, yes, this is good wisdom, which to me only muddies the water even more, that it's true, but not true. Because look at this. This is the point of Eliphaz. This is what I mean by that. Is that the point of Eliphaz is to turn around and say to Job, right, you're a righteous man, so to say, and you're wondering, you're trying to get to terms with why all of this misery has happened to you. And you used to give out advice to those that were in your situation, and you'd mete out the advice, and now you're receiving it, and you don't seem to be receiving it as well. And he says this in verse number 7. "Remember, I pray thee, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the righteous cut off? Even as I have seen, they that plough iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same." Now, is that a true statement? So, they that sow iniquity reap the same. It is a true statement that if you do wickedly, then you end up with the fruits of wickedness. Solomon says that as well with Proverbs, where he says, right, they that live foolishly will eat the fruit thereof. That the fools eat the fruit thereof of their foolishness. So Eliphaz it's true that yes, the wicked reap wickedness. And they that are cut off and they that have sorrows are the ones that do wrong. But here's why I say true and not true. Because is that the reason that it's happening to Job? No. So it's true and not true, which is a very difficult thing to get your head around.
Well, you've got to look at it in full perspective, in as much as, what's this book about? It's about instruction. Satan came to the Lord and said, "Look at this guy. You've hedged him about. He's never done anything wrong, and he's going well, right?" So Job is being taught a lesson by God. He's using other instruments, and it's a bit like, Job is a bit like here, what I would assume, when you go to university, you get a degree, you might have the knowledge, but you don't have the wisdom, right? You don't, because you haven't been through that. So it appears that Job hasn't been through really tough times, but now he is, because he can't give an answer when it's really tough. But once he comes through this, and you can see by how God has blessed Job, he's a more complete person in as much as, yes, what he's saying is true. All those things are true. But now I can back it up with wisdom rather than just saying, this is like someone learning from books saying, this is what you need to do, right? Without having experience, because there's a big difference there. There's a big difference in wisdom and knowledge. You preached that on before. And I think, Job's had a lot of knowledge, obviously a very devout man, but he hasn't had the wisdom because he hasn't been taken through the fire at this stage. And everything that Eliphaz, Eliad's saying is true, at the end of the day, the word of God's true. End of story, full stop. But I think it's a bit like someone who goes to university, gets a degree on something, they know all the things, they know all the right things, but they still haven't executed it or tested it or tried it.
Yes, but I would come back also to this, that Eliphaz is saying, right, basically, bad things are happening, bad things happen to bad people, good things happen to good people, and he's saying, which righteous person was ever cut off? Like, you get cut off because you're unrighteous. So he says bad things happen to bad people. That's his premise of his argument. And again, this is the thing that's so confusing with Job, is that what you just said is absolutely correct, and that's Eliphaz's argument, is like, this is what it is. But in this particular case, it's not, in the sense that we have the backstory to say that Job was a righteous man. So Eliphaz is saying, well, bad things happen to bad people. But he's saying, well, except in this case, God says he was a righteous man. Here's a man who eschews evil and loves righteousness and is righteous before me. And so it's why, as Lisa's question is and what you say as well, it's so confusing to work out, okay, this is difficult, and life is difficult to work out exactly.
I think his friend was getting frustrated with Job because Job was whinging. You know how sometimes people have it good and they come to you, they whinge, you think, oh, well, man, you've had a pretty good life. I think his friend just like had enough. Like, dude, come on.
7 days.
You've been.
He's up to 7 days.
And whinging. Enough is enough, man. You know, God is God, and and he's just frustrated with him.
Yeah.
So, but
And his argument, though, is worth noting, is that he's saying, right, in particularly in verse 7 and verse 8, who they that plough iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same. And he says in verse number 7, whoever perished being innocent. So Job, you must have done something wrong.
Yeah.
Bad things have happened to you. Something must have done wrong. Yeah. And that's what they're trying to work out. And that's what they're basically putting him on trial. Yeah. Now look at this in verse number 2. Time goes fast, but look at verse number 2. It says this: if we essay to commune with thee, wilt thou be grieved? Does anybody know what essay means? It's a word that we very rarely use. In a sense, it is measure. Yeah. To measure something, to assay in chemistry is to determine the content or quality of a metal or ore. So you assay it. And to assay, an assay is an investigation, an analytic procedure in a laboratory in medicine, mining, pharmacology, environmental biology, molecular biology for qualitatively assessing or quantitatively measuring the presence, amount, or functional activity of a target entity known as the analyte. You say, whoa, big chemistry lesson here tonight. But this is what it means. So it's the actual testing of the material. So if you have iron ore, there's different grades of iron ore, right? There's top quality grades and lower grades, and they go test that. They assay it, is what they do. They do chemical testing of it to work it out. The person who does the testing is the assayer. The assayer assays the composite, and the composite is known as the analyte. All right, or the analyte, which is you analyze it. So there's 3 things here. So for gold, when you analyze, try and stay with me on this one, all right? When you analyze something, you analyze gold and you work out what kind of gold it is. Now, gold in its purity, this may be above my head as well, but gold in its purity, purest form, is measured in carats, right? And the purest form is 24 carats, all right? So if there's other composites in it, then they will assay it to find out its composite value. They will analyze it to be the analyte. So this is why I love. I kind of got distracted by this word even this afternoon as I was studying it, because if you look up every other Bible, you will find it written like this. In the NIV, it says someone. This is how verse 2 is translated. If someone ventures a word with you, you will be impatient, but who can keep from speaking? The ESV, if one ventures a word with you, or the NASB, if one ventures a word with you, which is in the sense of the verse, it's the similar idea of it being carried. So venture, or even in the New King James, it says this: if one attempts a word with you, will you become weary? Or the modern English version, it says, if one attempts a word with you, will you become impatient? All of them are either if you venture a word or if you attempt a word. Venture means this: dare to say or say something that may be considered audacious. So they're saying, Eliphaz is saying, do we venture a word with you? Do we dare be so bold as to say something audacious towards you, that you might be grieved in what we hear? It is the sense of it, but I love that the King James has this old archaic word, seemingly, that is assay. It is richer and deeper, and that's exactly what I found. I found myself chasing this rabbit of assayer and assaying and the analyte, and the only reason I chased it is because the word was in the King James, this assay, and it made me go look it up. And it made me realize this, that you may find easier reading Bibles in English. You will find Bibles that are easier to read in English. All of them. Okay, it'd be a very biased comment, and I'll answer that. It's a very biased comment to say this King James Bible is easy reading. It's not easy reading. Let's not kid ourselves and pretend like this is easy reading. I'll tell you what is easy reading: the Message. It just reads like the daily newspaper. But in so doing, it loses the depth, the richness of the words that are there. So the reason that we use the King James isn't just to be archaic, it's actually because there's a depthness to these words that I've yet seen anywhere else in any other Bible that gives me a richer, fuller meaning of the Bible. Now get this, the word assay doesn't just mean to say, dare we speak boldly before you. Yes, that's what Eliphaz is saying, but we can pick that up from saying, lest that wilt thou be grieved. So, but what he says in being assayed means we're going to, Job, don't be angry with us or be grieved with us, but we're going to put you under trial. We're going to test your composition. We are going to be the assayer, and we are going to assay you. We're going to test your value, and you are going to be the analyte. And he says, we are going to try your very character, and don't be grieved with us. If we say some hard things to you, we're going to assay you. We're not just, oh, please, just, you know what I mean? Like the word assay actually has a deeper, richer meaning, which then, as you read through the book of Job, you know what comes up again and again? Wisdom is more precious than rubies. They're saying, I tell you what, we have assayed, that man is fragile, but wisdom of God is actually valuable. This has the purest composite that we can find. Man is frail, but the wisdom of God is good. You know what Job also says? He says, I wish I could find God and I could stand before him face to face and I would plead with him as a man pleads with a man. And he says this, and I shall come forth as gold. Do you know what he's saying? He's saying, you are assaying me and you are acting as assayers and you're assaying me and saying that my composition is faulty. I would say that if I stood before God and he assayed me, I would come forth as gold. So this idea of testing the value of raw metals actually follows through the whole book of Job, that is what the arguments are about. And you get that from the very beginning of Eliphaz when he says, we assay to commune. And this day people say, right, well, no one understands what the word assay means. So let's change that and we'll make it into a word that's easier to read. But in so doing, I would challenge you by saying, well, yes, you might make it easier to read, but you won't make it more accurate. And it might be a bit of an effort to go, you know what, I don't know what the word assay means, but some good men put it there for a reason. I'm going to actually go study the word of God. Study to show thyself approved, a workman unto God that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And so I would say to you again, therefore we use the King James Bible, not because we are stuck in the past, but because we take the word and the words of God seriously. And the word say here, don't just go, oh, it's an old, we'll just change it. Well, actually, just go study it and you might find a richer, fuller understanding of the book of Job. And I think that actual trial of the assayers who are assaying the analyte is really what the whole book of Job is about, and what the value of Job is. What's his composition going to come out like? And you'll find that is a major part of it all.
Looks like a forensic investigation.
Absolutely, and they're doing it on the character of Job, and they're trying to say you are guilty, and they're trying to bring in all the evidence they can to make him guilty, so that they then can say, right, bad things are happening to you because you're a bad person. And if you were good, and if you just sought God, then good things would happen to you. So they say to him in verse number 8 of chapter 5, for this same in their argument of trying to make him guilty in their forensic studies, Eliphaz says, you know what, Job, if I was you, you know what I'd do? I would seek unto God, and unto God would I commit my cause. I would just say, God, look, I don't know what's going on, but I just seek you, and you're going to turn all these things. And then he goes on and tells you about all the good things that God will do to you if you just seek him. Which is that good to seek God? It's on our walls. Seek him. So Eliphaz, again, it's true, but in this particular case, it's not true. And so we are in this same predicament of working out life, that yes, life does work to, bad things do happen to bad people, and good things do happen to good people, but not always. So sometimes it's true. Most of the time it's true, but sometimes it's not true. And bad things do happen to good people for reasons that are beyond our scope and our understanding at this particular point and juncture in life. All those things are here. That's what this is wrestling with. Man, I tell you what, big stuff on a Wednesday night, isn't it? But that's what Job is about. But yeah, read it, study it, and find out what they're actually looking at. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Find a prayer partner or two.